Hi. Hi,
Hello,
everybody.
everyone.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
Hey, good to see you, Janine. Today's the
Good.
day.
Today is the day we finally made it. We're here, and it is so exciting.
It's so nice to welcome everyone to the Sacramento conversation on corporate boards.
Yeah, and we're going to have a really great discussion just about all of the pieces that need to come together in order for women in the various stages of their career who desire to sit on boards, how we get there. And I think this will be a really good conversation. What do you think, Annie?
We are looking forward to it. And you got to stay until the very end because we have coaching sessions to help everyone map out their pathway to the corporate boardroom.
Yeah, and while we can't ask questions here right now, the breakout sessions is where you will get to ask all of those questions to women who are currently sitting. On boards and who have sat on boards. So there's going to be a lot of experience in the board in these breakout sessions, and so really hope that you will bring your questions to ask there. So anything else we need to talk about before I turn it over to you, Annie?
No, I think everyone is just excited to hear from you, hear from our VIP panel.
Yeah, definitely. And, use the chat, let us know that you're here in the chat. We'd love to see that. And so with that, I want to thank you. Thank you, Annie. Thank you to the 50/50 Women on Boards committee. Thank you to all of those in attendance. I will join again when it's time for the panel discussion. I'm so happy to be here and happy that you are here with us also.
See you soon, Janine.
All right, see you later.
Great. Now, I would like to take an opportunity to thank our sponsors for supporting our efforts. Here on the next two slides are our global sponsors. And a big thank you to our Sacramento sponsors coming up on the screen, Strategies 360 and Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California. And lastly, a big hands up to our Sacramento leadership team, to Preet, Angela, Jody, Andrea, and Anne. Thank you for serving and for your dedication in making today happen. So next up, you will hear from our 50/50 Woman on Board CEO, author, and the mastermind behind SB 826, the measure that is changing the face of boardrooms. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you very much, Annie and Janine. Good morning, everybody. I'm Betsy Berkemer-Credera, and I am CEO of 50/50 Women on Boards, which is a huge campaign that is global. And Sacramento is one of 30 events throughout U.S. cities and international cities happening over the next 2.5 weeks. So you're part of something big and a momentum that is carrying you and other women forward to be on corporate boards. So as you might recall, our name was originally 2020 Women on Boards, and our campaign started back in 2010. And we had a great event last year in Sacramento. Many of you attended. And we now have met, after we met our first goal of 20% by the year 2020, we changed our name to 50/50 Women on Boards. And we are consistently and proactively presenting the business case to companies and to the public about how important it is to have women, not just on boards, but now someday holding 50% of all board seats. And by that, we mean women and men each hold 50% of board seats on corporate boards. And if it's an odd number board, then the women could be one more or one less than half. But we are getting there slowly but surely. And I'm just looking forward to the day when someday you look back and say, all male, all white male corporate boards are just a thing of the past, like looking back at a Model T Ford and thinking what an anachronism that was ages and ages ago. So I want to thank our chairs, our co-chairs, and Annie Lamb and Janine Jenkins for all the work they've done, and the leadership committee here in Sacramento. And we are moving now to share with you some of the statistics nationwide and in California that we are extremely proud of. And we work with our research partner, Equilar, to track the research of Russell 3000 companies, and those are the largest companies in the 3,000 largest companies in the U.S. So let's go to our first nationwide slide. Quarterly and annually, we use the data from Equilar to create our gender diversity index, and we develop the key findings. We analyze the percentage of women on boards nationwide by state and sector. So this is really historic, everybody. Of the total directors in the country who serve on the Russell 3000 boards, as you can see, the red bar is nationwide, and nationwide this year, and the gray bar is nationwide last year. So there's been an increase of 1,000 board members, and it's 27,000 at this point. And of those nationwide, women hold 6,900 board seats, which is a long way from 50-50, as you can tell. But the big news is the bottom red bar, and that is that women have reached 25.6% of holding the 25.6% of the board seats in the U.S., which has never happened before. And it's all because of our constant pressure and for companies to be seeing the wisdom, the business wisdom of having women on boards. And that's a big increase, 3% year over year. That's the largest increase over the previous 5 years. I mean, women are just shooting up in the numbers nationwide. And next slide, we want to talk about California, our state, which is also having a historic time right now because of SB 826, the law that requires all corporate boards to have public company boards in California to have at least 3 women on their boards by the end of this year. So there are 4,600 corporate board seats here in California of the Russell 3000 companies. 1,300 of them are held by women currently, but that's the highest it's ever been in California, has shot up to 29.3%, which is 5% higher than the national level. And we're really proud of that. And all of you in California can be proud of that. We're going to talk about how you can talk to companies in California at your senior career level in hopes that you will start navigating your career someday to serve on corporate boards. But let's go to the next slide and go back to nationwide. This is 215 out of the almost 3,000 companies in the Russell 3000 are already gender balanced. That's 7% of the total number of Russell 3000 companies in the US, which is greater than 5% last year. So we're moving ahead. Again, the red bars are this year. And you'll see that on the second bar that the numbers of companies with 3+ women, that means at least 3, maybe more on their boards, is increasing significantly. I mean, an 8% increase from last year. And that means correspondingly, of course, that the lower bars with 2, 1, or 0 women are decreasing this year because there's so many more women being moved into the 3+ or the gender balance category. And we're really proud of that nationwide. But in California, our next slide, you'll see we're even better, that we have reached 10% of California companies, that's 56 out of the 536 companies that are in the Russell 3000 in California. 10% are already gender balanced. Has a great deal to do with the law that's in California, that's in no other state with the requirements that we have. And the companies that have 3+ women on their boards have increased significantly. Thanks to the law, yes, but also companies realizing the business value of having women on their board. So we're at 42% of the companies, that's almost half in the state, that have 3 or more women on their boards. With the other categories, again, reducing this year because women have significantly increased on the 3+ and the gender balanced companies. This is great great news for all of us women, for all of you in the audience. And it's good for the California economy, because the research shows that when women are on boards, companies are more profitable, more productive, and the workforce is better engaged. So back to nationwide. In California, I'm sorry, it's not nationwide, it's in California though. In order for us to achieve 50%, 50-50 women on boards in the state of California, in the Russell 3000 companies, we need to have 817 women. This is the range from 817 women to 1,400 being named and earn a seat on corporate boards in California. The lower number is if women replace a man who's already on a board, so the numbers of board seats remain lower. But the higher number is if what most companies do is add a seat physically and legally to their boards. So the higher number would be 1,400 women if all boards added a seat or several seats in order to achieve 50% women on their boards. So we hope that's what's going to happen in California. Now, on the next slide, you'll see that the numbers of people of color on corporate boards are very low. And that is absolutely not acceptable. And in our educational programs and our efforts, our goal is to not only achieve 50% women on corporate boards, but also we want to see 20% of the total number of people on boards, 20% be women of color. And you can tell from this slide that we have a long way to go. Out of the total directors, only 17% self-identify their race and ethnicity, and of that, 12% are people of color, which breaks down to 4.5% women, 7.4% men. Extremely low. So we encourage board directors also to self-identify by claiming or creating their Equilar Board Edge profile. And through Equilar and through the SEC, board members self-identify their racial or other background, and that will help the researchers better assess and develop solutions for underrepresented groups. So we're going to put Board Edge into the chat shortly so that those of you who are corporate directors can fill out your Board Edge Equilar profile. And then this is our final slide, and it's important about race and ethnicity. As you'll see, the low percentages of people of color by race and ethnicity is dramatic, really dramatic. And this shows that women directors of color are very low, the lowest levels in this graph. And then men are a little higher, men of color are a little higher, but significantly, we are working on getting more women educated about how to navigate their careers in order to get onto boards. So that's where we are, everybody, and you are part of this effort to achieve greater numbers of women and people of color on boards. So let's go back to Janine.
Thank you for that information, Betsy. I mean, it's always good to sort of know what the lay of the land looks like so that we know how to craft our strategy, how we know how to be strategic in order to ultimately reach our goal. So thanks for sharing that data with us today.
And I could add too, thanks, Janine, that in the breakout sessions this afternoon, all of you in the audience can talk to our panelists one-on-one about how you can navigate what to say about yourselves and how you can reach out to your contacts to start your long journey to be on a corporate board someday. So Janine, take it from here for our great panel.
Thank you, Betsy. I really do appreciate that opportunity. And so now I would like to introduce and welcome our panelists. So the first person that I would like to introduce to everyone today is Cheemin Bo-Lin. Cheemin currently serves as a CEO of Paratus Partners and currently sits on the corporate boards of Blackline Safety and Core Wireless. So welcome, Cheemin. Next, I would like to introduce Mona Pascal Rogers. She is currently the Director of California Public Policy at Facebook. She currently sits on the board of the California American Water Board. So welcome, Mona. I would also like to introduce Maria Contreras Sweet. Hello, Maria. And so Maria is currently the president and CEO of Rockway Equity Partners and sits on the board of Sempra Energy. And then bringing up the rear, we have Mr. Steve Fleming. Steve is currently the president and CEO of River City Bank and serves on the board of River City Bank. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give Steve a second. Looks like his camera is doing its own thing this morning. And so while we work on those technical issues, welcome. Very glad to have you. Very excited to hear the information that you have to share with us about how do we move forward? How do we get ourselves going? And so with that, I'd like to start. I'd like to throw out that first question, and can go to anybody, but it's around our theme. So our theme this year is leading the way to diverse and gender balanced boards. We certainly applaud you for doing just that, right? So share with us and with our audience, what practices or ideas have you put in place or seeded to attract a diverse board, whether it be directly or indirectly in your current organizations?
Well, I'll just start from the standpoint of I learned a lot of this when I worked with Maria in public service, and that is, how do you first increase the pool, and that means networking. That means mentoring. That means once we've sharing when we hear of different opportunities. But I think at its core, but also on corporate boards, it's really important for all of us to do our homework, to be prepared, to understand the dynamics of a board. Is this something I'm interested in? What's my value add? But also helping each other, sisters helping each other.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to add to what Mona just said, because I have to tell you, one of the greatest pleasures of my life was to having served as California's Secretary of Transportation. And Mona, in large measure, was a big part of that, as she oversaw the entire role that a governor plays in making political appointments. And that helps to build the pipeline. And I think so. Mona's being very modest. The fact that she was in such a pivotal role as the gatekeeper of so many commissions, cabinet positions, department heads, and et cetera, gave so many people an opportunity to, one, build their brand, build their resume, and to just build a network, which are all really requisite in terms of having exposure and being a prospect for board. So I wanted to thank Mona for that, because these are the kind of people that we need in really key positions. And she was so thoughtful to make sure that there was diversity. We just went through the numbers, and woefully, California is really behind on women of color, and so is the country writ large. And so to have a person like Mona at that position, I sound like I'm doing a testimony for her, but this is about sisterhood. And so these are the gatekeepers that we need to have, people who are really mindful and are committed to this cause.
Oh, Cheeman, there you go.
There you go. Thank you. I agree with Mona and Maria. I think the importance of building a pipeline is absolutely critical. And I think we also have a responsibility, once we get on a board, to make sure that we get more diverse board members on the board. Now, the question is, how do we do that? If we want to move on the diversity initiative faster and in the direction we want to, I encourage all of those who want to be on boards and those who are already on boards. I have felt that the power of being in a chair position is very powerful. I'm currently lead independent director of one of my public boards, and I'm chair of nomination on the other ones. You'll be surprised as candidates come up. If you're chair or, for example, on the committee of the nomination committee, you can ask those key questions because that's part of your responsibility. It says, the candidates we've looked at, is that reflective of not only our current, but our future customers? Do they reflect the views of our growth strategy? So not by asking the right set of questions, we can encourage the other board members to think outside of the box of who they know. Because if they still focus on who they know, there's not an opportunity for all of us listening to this webinar or all of us panel speakers to really get on boards. So get in a power of get in a position of influence, and remember to bring others up once you get there.
Just one more sentence I wanted to add. Sure. I really love what Shimin said, and that is that there's so many different avenues. I mean, obviously, we're talking about how do we get more women on corporate boards, and so clearly, one path is what we just described with Mona and Shimin. And the second piece, I don't want to forget, because I think it's also important for so many women who are not already on boards or on a political board, is that, and what I've been working on of late, as you know, as Obama's cabinet member over the U.S. Small Business Administration, is to become the head of your own company.
Right.
So I'm deeply committed also to firm formation, capital formation, to make sure that we get more women CEOs of growing enterprises that then give them a role and a skill set to serve, a view to serve more effectively on a corporate board. Once you run a company and you have that view, that prism, that perch, it really does inform your position for larger scale operations. And so there's so many different paths, but I just want to include the entrepreneurial path as well.
For sure, for sure. And Steve, I know that you were working on your technical difficulties. I didn't know. Did you want to chime in on this question also?
Yeah, I would. I think Shimin, from what I heard, I think she made a great point about networking. I think you have to get out there and be seen and make it happen. I'd also say, and I think this ties in with Maria's point, crush it with your career. The best visibility you're going to get is rising into leadership roles as an entrepreneur in the corporate world, in the public sector. That's going to give you visibility, and that visibility is critical because when corporate boards come to make decisions, there's a process, and it typically comes down to either you rely on the existing board members or the CEO to build a pipeline, or you go out or do a search. But particularly in the former, people are going to suggest people that they know, people that they've had interactions with. Nonprofit boards are a great way to meet other leaders in your community. You get a chance to build relationships through that process. And more often than not, existing board members are going to recommend people that they work with before. It's just kind of human nature. And if they've worked with you on a nonprofit or in an executive role, you're far more likely to be top of mind when it comes to building that company's pipeline.
And that leads me into my next question. And all of you have highlighted the importance of networking. And we know that it's important because boards are built through relationships, right? And several board members may support a candidate whom they know versus looking outside their immediate network. So knowing how important networking and relationships are to moving into this position, what strategies, practices, or organizations do you recommend for use to search for and select diverse board candidates outside of one's immediate network? Sure, Shimin.
I could chime in on that one. And some of the boards that I've served on and other boards that I know my colleagues serve on, a natural step is let's go around the table. Let's see who we know, right? And it's difficult to say, okay, well, let's look at other candidates. A more objective way to maybe have them look outside of who they know. Who they know may be absolutely great because culture and chemistry is very important on the board. But if you stick to a skill gap analysis, that will actually expand the pool. That not only you should take the people they know and add to it other people that you may not know that may come from other pools. The other thing we need to get out, in my opinion, out of the lane that says we only want people who are CEOs. We know there are not a lot of women who are CEOs of public company, and there's not a lot of minority who are in C-suite or already on boards. So we need to think differently of what kind of different pools of people could we have access to, and then help them build relationships. Because you're absolutely right, Janine. Most of the boards, even if they use an executive recruiter, rely on relationships, which is great. I'm just saying supplement that maybe with some candidates you may not otherwise know, especially diverse candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that speaks to what was just said earlier, and that is that as long as you, in my view, in my experience, we mostly use executive search firms. Even if we know them, we have them go through the search firm. And in the final analysis, we're looking for a particular. We typically have a grid that says, okay, we need a technician, we need somebody who's going to be our expert on audit. We're going to need somebody that really understands governance, and so we're looking for particular skill sets. And the common denominator is that they all have to have some level of financial acumen. And so I recommend just sharpening the skill sets. Number one, that's for me. I think it's important to supplement your skill sets in terms of what the overall board governance would require. And then second, be in a leadership position in those places, because people want somebody that has, not technical, because you can always hire somebody that has technical, but understands it at a larger level. And so that you've had leadership in that role. So at least that's been my experience. But the third I wanted to add is also that as you're building your CV, your profile, that you also contemplate how and I keep using the word branded, so excuse me for using that, but at least in our instances, we've actually had to change our mind and be really careful about people that we brought on. As somebody alluded to, cultural fit. If they belong to organizations that we felt were might bring some risk to our organization, or weren't a cultural fit, controversial in some way, that sort of caused a little bit of consternation in the conversation. So also think about how you're building your brand in a way that is enhancing added value to the organization.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because as long as we live our lives, we have fun situations, we have not so great fun situations. Somebody takes a picture, someone's upset about something, and I feel like before, one of the first steps that we have to take is, how do people see us when they do their vetting on us? What will they see? Who will they talk to? If the first thing that comes up is in a search is a neighborhood fight that you were in because you didn't like an undulation on the street, they're going to look how you handled yourself. So really, yes, how you want to present yourself as to what Maria says, but you really have to think about, when people do their vetting, what do they find, and how do you clean some things up?
I also want to echo a comment that Sheeman made about CEOs on boards. I think typically, particularly with larger companies, you look around the boardroom table and you see a group of CEOs. And I've been the CEO of several banks, primarily because I've been on the board, I should say, primarily because I've been the CEOs of those banks. And I can tell you, it's very different being an executive on the board versus being in a pure governance role. And while there is some overlap in the skill sets that are required, a lot of CEOs are lousy board members, and a lot of board members would be lousy CEOs. That is a reality. A lot of CEOs, particularly the more entrepreneurial type, are going to be less collegial in approach. They're going to be more dogmatic. They're going to want to be in charge. And being in a board, in a board environment where they may be one of 10 votes or 12 votes, whatever it is, it's different culturally for them, and they may not be a fit. So I think it's really important to have some self-awareness.
So in that same vein, around that self-awareness, right?
I wanted to ask.
Did we lose Janine and Maria?
I think so.
I think, well, they're frozen on our screen, so. Yes, but I'm looking at it, we're still streaming.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I do agree, though, that everyone, that, the balance of roles, CEOs versus, someone who might be an expert on governance. You have a lot of different experiences, people with those different experiences, you get the best board. There you are. Hey, Janine.
Hey there. See, I was checking to see what was going to happen when I ducked out. Now I'm back.
Uh-oh. Well, while Janine's working on the technical issues, maybe I can ask you guys, Mona and Sheeman, just to talk a little bit about how you got your first board assignment. How did that happen?
Sheeman, you go first, because mine is so funny.
My first board, actually, the chair of a public company contacted me through LinkedIn. Right. And they were actually looking for, and another board contacted me through LinkedIn. And they were looking for and it's very easy. I mean, it was an executive recruiter. I mean, later on, after they talk to you and then they flip you over to an executive recruiter who does the due diligence. I think, Steve, you made that comment. But they were looking for a very specific requirement. I think in my instances, they were looking for somebody who was a Fortune 100 tech exec who ran a multi-billion-dollar P&L. They were looking for somebody who was in digital transformation. They were looking for someone who had cybersecurity experience. So if you think about it, it's fairly easy for them to do a search on those parameters, right? Back then, they didn't have the legislation says we want a woman or a ethnic minority when I got on my first board. But it's very easy to put in those search parameters on LinkedIn. And then I think my name popped up and a bunch of other men's names popped up. So it was actually through LinkedIn. And then, like I said before, later on, the due diligence was done by an executive recruiter.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how powerful a tool LinkedIn is for recruiting, including for a senior board member like yourself?
And you're right, Steve. And if you think about it, in actuality, and I'd love to hear Mona and Maria talk about it, by the time they contact you, they probably have done a lot of research on you via LinkedIn or, see who you're connected in. Mm-hmm. So that's I think that is very important, your LinkedIn. But I think Mona mentioned this. Also, make sure you clean up your social profile. Mm-hmm. And like Maria said, your personal brand is very important. So I think Mona and Maria made very good points a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. I'll just add that for me, it was very, very similar to Shimon's experience in that I had a profile in government affairs, clearly as California Secretary of Transportation and Housing, and then later on a president's cabinet. And in different assignments, I had started a bank, and so I was the chairman and founder of our family bank that received quite a bit of visibility because it was one of the few Latino-owned banks in the country. So all of those things, I think, gave me an understanding about the labyrinth, the complexities of engaging government and regulatory constructs. And so most of the boards that I'm on are seeking, usually they have a complicated relationship with government. They're highly regulated, or they're government contractors, or something that has something to do with government. And so they're looking for that skill set about how to navigate through that complexity. And so that's one of the things that I bring. And obviously, as a CEO and chairman, founder of my own family bank, that's another element that I have. not just run an organization, but had to build it, and one that was also highly regulated. And so I think those things were really tough. But the only reason I bring that back up is that for me, I was on a corporate board and I enjoyed that. And certainly there is some remuneration for doing that work. But I felt that it was more important for women to start building their own enterprises, their own companies. And so I said to many people who had asked me to serve on their boards, I said, look, you're going to pay me maybe a couple $100,000 to serve on your board. This is 20 years ago. There's some are doing a little better than that now. But I said, what if I pay you $200,000 to serve on my board? Because I think it's really important for us to form our own firms. And I said, because for the time and skill set that I'm bringing to your company, that I could use that time in building my own enterprise so that we have more minority-owned institutions in our country, I think is a really important thing. So while we're here to talk about how to get on corporate boards, I want to make sure that I'm not dissuading anybody from building their own enterprise and scaling it so that you're running your own company and really building wealth and building jobs. And then you recruit all these other people that didn't recruit you on their board. You recruit them to serve on your board. That's really the goal. So I just want to tell you that I'm more about firm formation and scaling women enterprises. But happy to talk about getting women on corporate boards.
You are okay. This is why Maria is so, just so fabulous, right? Because she's got this great story, but she's teaching every step of the way. Shemin, the same thing you're teaching. So my coach was really Mona from the block, kind of not anything. It was one of those. I had this opportunity where for years, right? I had been interviewing people to serve on boards, but I always had, at the back of my mind, I always watched some of these corporate boards, and I was part of Governor Brown's team when he signed the Women on Corporate Boards bill, SB 26. So mine was different. I was going through a transition where I knew I wanted to do something different because I had mentored so many women, and I had always told them, you need to push yourself to do something that's a little uncomfortable where you don't feel is asking for things. So it happened on one day. I met someone I'd worked with for years who had gone off and he was on other boards. And he said, well, how are you doing? I said, well, I'm in a transition. He says, well, how can I help you? I said, I need you to get me on a board. And he's like, you're not going to believe this, but I just came from a meeting. We're looking for somebody like you with governance experience and this and that. And I thought, oh, ha, ha, ha. He's just saying that. And then a day later, the CEO's office for the board called and scheduled lunch. And so, we also have to be, as women, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, we also have to be courageous in really putting out there what we want. Yes, we have to help each other when it comes time for, if you really want something, you need to put yourself, you need to, check out your brand, shape up, get everything ready, but you have to be prepared to say, yes, me.
That is so important. I'm stepping back in to say hello because Janine is, we have some technology difficulties, sorry to say, but I wanted to emphasize what you've all just said about networking is so critical. And we recommend in our workshops at 50/50 Women on Boards, we recommend that each of you identify 25 of your key contacts and actually reach out to them, a Zoom call, ask them their counsel about your value-added experience, what you would bring to a board. These are people you might have known in business school or your executives in the company where you work, or even your nonprofit boards. And all of you who aren't yet on a nonprofit board should get on one. And you can do that fairly easily by volunteering at a nonprofit and then working your way, a nonprofit that you care about, their mission, and then work your way to their board. But 85% of the women in my books, by the way, that's called Winning the Board Game. I'll put that in the chat for you. But I've written 2 books interviewing more than 100 women who about their stories, how they got on their first corporate board. And 85% of them were recommended by someone they knew on their nonprofit board. So really important. And I see Steve nodding about that. So that is a stepping stone. And the other value you get out of a nonprofit board, besides making excellent business contacts of people from other companies, you also learn the board dynamics and being in the boardroom. So I don't want to, forgive me for going off on that networking riff. It's just so important. And thank you all for mentioning that. And you never know where it's going to come from. Like Mona, it could be somebody you've networked with or known for years, and suddenly they remember you. Or suddenly after the Zoom call, they realize that you would be a value-added board member. Right. So let me ask you, and I'll start with Steve. And I love the conversation. Please continue to interact with each other on your comments. But Steve and Maria and all of you chime in. Oftentimes, especially women of color from underrepresented groups tend to get stuck in middle management and not necessarily moving into those roles where they learn leadership and would advance their careers to someday serve on corporate boards. I love what Maria said about entrepreneurs, and Steve added that as entrepreneurs sometimes are great board members, especially women entrepreneurs. In fact, we have the National Association of Women Business Owners of California and Sacramento very much involved in this event, as they were with the SB 826. How do you recommend, though, in your company, Steve, that you provide pathways or help with more movement between the different tiers in the company so that women can move up and learn more and become leaders?
Yeah, so as you might guess, banking is not unlike a lot of industries where you've got a pretty good percentage of women in the workforce. At River City Bank, I think 65% of our employees are women, so disproportionately high number of women. But there was a recent McKinsey study that showed that the number of women in leadership roles in banks is way below the percentage of women in the industry. Women tend to represent a smaller and smaller percentage as you go up the corporate ladder, and women of color even more pronounced, a smaller and smaller percentage as you go up the corporate ladder. I think, and this ties in a little bit with some of your slides earlier, Betsy, I think that situation is improving. I think we're making progress as a society, but we still have a long ways to go. I love what Maria was saying about be an entrepreneur. That may be even more important than being a board member, and it will lead to board membership also. And I kind of look at it as go out there and do something special with your career, whether it's starting and running a business, moving up the corporate ladder. Just get known for being good at what you do. And I think with where we are in society today, I think that it's a much better environment for recognizing the contribution that women are making. And also, not to be understated, is seeing more and more women moving up has a flywheel effect because other women see that, and that's incredibly important. I can tell you, I took it for granted as a young man in my career. Most of my bosses were older men, and I'd never really thought about that. But to a certain extent, I guess I looked at them and said I could be what they're doing. But I had one of my younger employees who works in our clean energy division, which is all women, by the way, and run by a very talented woman. And then one of our younger employees, super smart, and she said, I got to tell you, one of the things I really like about working at the bank is being able to see other women in leadership roles. That means a lot to me. And it got me to sort of step back and think about it, because it was something I just took for granted. And now I've given it a lot more thought, and I realized that having those people that you can see and say, I could be them, I could do what they do. I think that's really powerful.
And Maria,
thank you.
Say board members, please chime in.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I agree with Steve. The idea for me was how, because I grew up in corporate, large international conglomerate. And so the question was, how do you create rotational opportunities P&L opportunities, because if you can show that you can manage a P&L, you can read the balance sheet, you understand how to manage the audits and those types of things. And I think that, that you're building the skill set for that. So clearly it's all about the skill set, just making, again, providing leadership in key roles. But secondly, I wanted to say that so many times I see that I just don't want women to approach the situation as supplicants. I mean, you have to remember, these corporations are financed by largely our pension funds, right? And so who are the workers of our country in California and elsewhere? Women are 50%, at least. I forget, Mona will give us the statistics. But to remember that when someone says, well, gee, our investor community, our IR relations team, our investor relations team says, well, the IR community wants this, or our guidance, our earnings guidance, and so forth, I always say, just remember that they are simply brokers for the people in our community. They represent me and my pension. They represent my neighborhood. And so we have to remind companies sometimes that they're so focused on the private equity firms and forgetting that the private equity firms are simply managers of our funds. And you have to always remind people when you're sitting at the boardroom that we have to keep the community, the marketplace in mind. And secondly, that when you get on that board, not to be just about go along to get along. You want to have a cultural fit, and you want to have a sense of decorum and protocol and be deferential and polite. But you also have to make sure that you're advancing, as was said earlier, that we're advancing the ESG values, because that's, there's no point of having more women on the board if we behave the same. Hopefully we're adding value and we're looking at the world through a newer, more fresh prism that includes environmental responsibility, social engagement, and proper, more transparent governance models.
Boy, that's great. Happily, we're welcoming Janine back. Hi, Janine.
Hi there.
Great. So let me step away and continue the conversation for, we're going to have another 10 minutes before we say farewell. But Janine, so glad you're back.
Thank you. Thank you. And, the conversation around the ESG goals, and Credit Suisse, the research concluded that corporations with women on their boards are more profitable and more productive. How is this a competitive advantage? Like, we're talking about all these things coming together and being able to reach these goals, but are we truly seeing the competitive advantage that having women on a board can bring?
This one, I'm muted. So, I've, as a board of director, I've actually, and chair of ESG, I've actually published and going on my third ESG report. I think it's very important. It's not an easy task to do because you're pushing out public metrics of which you're going to be accountable for. But we've seen competitive advantages. It's not that we're just doing ESG to publish an ESG report, but if you look about it, it also helps from a recruitment perspective. The E part, the environmental, especially in millennials, they love to be working for a company which focuses on zero carbon, sustainability, etc. They like to work for a company that has a diverse population. Why? It'll be more successful. And then their stock will be worth more. They'll get paid more. They'll get promoted, etc. Because you have now not a homogeneous employee pool. You have a very heterogeneous one. And like Betsy talked at the beginning, diverse thinking makes better decisions. And that's just an example of some of the things. And I want to kind of go back to what Mona talked about is, as we talk about ESG and then the pipeline being there, but we have to remember the responsibility also lies on us to ask. If you're not already on your first board, you want to be on a second board, ask. And I've got to go back on Maria's comments to make sure everybody heard it. Every board that I've served on and from startup to Fortune 100 companies that I've served as a C-suite executive, they, in order to grow, they really love entrepreneurs, people who are innovative, because that's the way you're going to scale up and build. So I know, like Maria and then a few of us on here, we've had our own businesses as well as a mix of corporate. So the key takeaway is go on and ask. Make sure that you work for a company that embraces ESG, so you're not going uphill. And if it doesn't embrace ESG, get in there and help them open up their eyeballs, open up their eyes so they know the importance, because it is truly is a competitive advantage, not only from a profit perspective, but also from a recruitment perspective as well.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I want to bring Annie in. Due to all the technical difficulties, we're running out of time. But I appreciate just the insight that we have been able to benefit from as a result of your experience, as a result of all of the things that you have seen, because this is how we will move to the next place for us, because we don't know what we don't know. And there are lots, and we have the programs to be able to attend. And I think some of the things we learn sort of implicitly, right? We learn by hearing from others who have been on this journey. And so while we're waiting for Annie to join the call, what are your final words of advice to business women seeking board positions and to companies seeking women to serve?
I would say be prepared, but I would also say, like I've had a few recruiters call me with some pretty phenomenal boards, but I knew after my own reflection, I wouldn't be the best person. So I shared with them some names of other women. So bring others along every step of the way.
I like it. Bring others along. I like it.
I just like to just close with why this is so important to me. Many don't know. I was actually born in Mexico. I'm an American by choice. And so for me, I love this country, and I love the idea of maintaining its democracy, upholding our values and principles, our role in the world. And I think that the way in which we do it is largely by our corporations that are global have an impact in setting also standards and values around the world. And when I see so many strong men, so many, it's just the despotism and what's going on around the world. And having traveled representing the United States around those countries, I know the role that we can play. And so it's so important to have women so we can continue to advance women's rights around the world and deepen democracies and just have a better place for our daughters. And so my grandmother always said, if you go to America someday, I know that in America, with all of its values and everything, that someday you're going to be able to work in an office and be a secretary. And because of all the good stuff going on, I was able to hold office and to be a cabinet secretary. And that's the upward mobility that we want to continue to see in society for our daughters.
Very cool.
I wanted to add to that comment for those who are listening on this session, and you look in the mirror. I want you to say to yourselves, I'm ready to be on a board, and I'm going to work it. And I'm going to work it, and I'm going to make sure that the values that Maria talked about, that we cherish, that we put it in corporate America and in our communities. So that's my parting words to those who are listening on this session.
I guess
Well,
my
thank you all so much.
Oh, sorry.
And Steve as well.
I just say briefly, be excellent at what you do, get noticed, and be ambitious. Don't wait for somebody to drag you up. Go make it happen. Thank
you so much. Annie?
Thank you, Janine, for moderating such a great session. As of course, Betsy, you're always wonderful sharing your strategies and tips, and to our amazing panel. Thanks for sharing your story on how you got started. Cheeman, I was completely surprised when you said LinkedIn. That's so helpful to know. And you all are sharing information that, many aspiring women who want to serve don't have that information. So this is very helpful. And to our listeners, 50/50 Betsy run a lot of great sessions. If you want a deeper dive, check out our website. Betsy does this one-on-one or with a group. You can certainly learn a lot from her. She wrote 2 books on this topic. So stay tuned. We do have a coaching session right after this is over. You will hear directly from our director coach on how to map out your pathway to the boardroom. If you check out the chat box, there are directions there and instructions on how you can join. Enjoy the session, everyone.